Hello! It's time for the mid-year freakout book tag. Well, this video is actually quite late. People start posting these videos in June, but July is not quite over. We have a few days. It's kind of still the middle of the year, and FOMO. I didn't want to miss out on this booktuber rite of passage. I've already read 113 books for 2024, 67 volumes of manga, and 45 books, whether they be novels or novellas. So I got a lot of things to choose from, and I think I should have some pretty interesting answers to all the questions in this book tag. So let's just get to it. Question number 1. Best book you've read so far this year? That's easy. Blackwater by Michael McDowell, no doubt in my mind. If you would have asked me this question a few weeks ago, it would have been The Pariah by Anthony Ryan, but Blackwater is simply astounding. It's amazing. The characterization is amongst the best I've ever come across in all of fiction. It's a Southern Gothic masterpiece that takes place in Perdido, Alabama, a little small town, and it follows and tells the story of the prominent Caskey family, a family that's in charge of the largest lumber mill in the town. They're kind of like royalty in this small town. It mixes elements of a political thriller with a family saga, slice of life type story with elements of cosmic horror. It's a very slow read, very much a slow burn. Not a lot of things happen in Blackwater, but I'm okay with the story taking its time. It's technically 6 books, but they're compiled into one volume. I've read 4 of the 6 volumes so far, and unless the author finds a way to absolutely ruin the last 2 volumes, this book will remain my number 1 for the foreseeable future. But I have a lot of great standalones planned for this year. But Blackwater by Michael McDowell, give it a try. McDowell is never mentioned on BookTube, and after reading just most of Blackwater, I can't imagine why. There's a reason Stephen King called him the best writer of paperback originals in America right now. Rest in peace, Michael McDowell. I can't wait to go through your bibliography. Question number 2. Best sequel you've read so far this year? I'm going to go with Dispel Illusion by Mark Lawrence, the third and final installment in his Impossible Times trilogy. Mark Lawrence's library trilogy is getting a lot of love on BookTube, but this trilogy is astounding. It's a YA sci-fi thriller about time travel that follows our characters from their teenage years until adulthood, and the feeling of catharsis I got at the conclusion of this trilogy was unlike almost anything else I've ever read before. It's either this or Wayward Pines for best ending I've ever read. But yes, this YA sci-fi thriller snuck up on me. I loved the characters, the plot was engaging, and Mark Lawrence, he's a scientist, so he wrote time travel in a very believable and understandable way. I really wish more people on BookTube would give this a try because it's truly a hidden gem. Dispel Illusion is the strongest installment in the trilogy. It was just a perfect conclusion. Clearly the best sequel I've read in 2024 so far. Question number 3. New release you haven't read yet but want to. The Book That Broke the World by Mark Lawrence. Mark Lawrence is one of my favorite authors. You'll be hearing more about him in this video. But this is the second installment in his library trilogy. I haven't read the first installment yet because I hate reading ongoing series, but the third installment will be published in April of next year, and this book came out in April of this year, so I definitely want to be giving The Book That Broke the World a try, perhaps towards the tail end of the year, maybe the last 2 months or so, because I've heard great things about this trilogy, and a lot of Mark Lawrence's other trilogy are very polarizing. They're hit or miss. Most people don't like all of his trilogies. I've read everything I've read from him so far, but I haven't dived into the library trilogy, but I definitely will give this a go very soon. Question number 4. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. This question was hard for me to answer because I don't usually read new releases because I like to tackle series, and series that are ongoing, I usually give them a pass. I like to binge through a series if possible, and I'm not willing to wait around for a year or two waiting for the next installment. But there is one series that's going to make me break my rule because I think what the author is trying to do is incredibly ambitious. On August 6th, about a week from now, Rob J. Hayes' new book, Archive of the God Eater, comes out. What makes this so ambitious? He is tackling a monumental task. He is writing a trilogy of trilogies. He wrote the first installment of 3 separate trilogies all at the same time. They take place in the same world across the same timeline. They're all thousands of years apart. And he's going to publish the second installment of each trilogy at the same time. and then the third installment around the same time. And that's something so unique, something I've never heard about, something I've never considered. And it is so ambitious. I'm going to break my rule of not reading ongoing series and dive into this God Eater like trilogy of trilogies. Super impressive. Hopefully they're good because I'm going to be giving the first installment of each trilogy a try, hopefully before the end of the year. But yeah, I haven't tackled anything from Rob J. Hayes yet, but I heard about this and I was like, I gotta give it a go. This will be the ongoing series I'm going to be tackling. Question number 5. Biggest disappointment. Ooh, I'm going to say this book, but it wasn't a bad book. It was just incredibly disappointing for me. And I'm talking about Priest of Crowns by Peter McLean, the fourth and final installment of his War for the Rose Crown series. It's a quartet. I loved all installments. I even loved the fourth installment, but it was still incredibly disappointing. This series was meant to originally be a trilogy, but he felt like it needed to be turned into 4 books because the plot was a little cramped. He didn't want to feel rushed. So I was expecting fireworks for the 4th installment. And I did get fireworks. But the ending was so rushed that the author took away all feelings of catharsis for me. And that was really sad because I invested in this story. I read 4 books. I loved these characters. I laughed. I cried. I was emotionally invested. And everything was resolved in like 2 paragraphs. I will say thematically, the ending was great. It made perfect sense. But the way the author went about doing it, I felt like it was very underwhelming, incredibly disappointing for me. This book was not a bad book, definitely still 3.5 out of 5 stars, but every other installment in this series was either 4 or 5 stars for me. So quite sad. Still a good quartet, still a good book, Priest of Crowns, but still disappointing. That's rating, that's subjective. I'm not sure if it makes sense. Question number 6. Biggest surprise. This one's easy. This ended up being the book of the month for me last month. Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion. I'm surprised that I'm saying a zombie romance story is my biggest surprise of 2024, but truly it was. I was expecting some cutesy, stupid romance story because I watched the Warm Bodies movie years ago, over 10 plus years ago, and I liked it. But my wife told me that the book was so much better. I didn't have too much faith in her. But after reading Warm Bodies, I was like, dang, Marion can write. This is a very compelling story. The writing was very intelligent, a very thought-provoking work. Lots of passages to highlight in Warm Bodies. Yes, it's a zombie romance, but it's about a lot more than the romance. And that was impressive. So the most surprising book for me this year, Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion, for sure. I feel very safe saying that. Question number 7. Favorite new author? I'm going to say Michael McDowell, the author of Blackwater. I have heard so many great things about him. And I kind of doubted it because I was like, it's just hyperbole. But after reading the first 4 installments of Blackwater, I need to read more of him. He is such a great writer. He creates atmosphere like no other. His characterization is second to none. I understand why Stephen King spoke so highly of Michael McDowell, why they were such close friends, why Stephen King's wife finished Michael McDowell's last book when he passed away. I need to read more of him. I can't wait to tackle more of his bibliography starting early next year because I have a lot of standalones I'm trying to focus on. But yes, Michael McDowell, the man can write. He's astounding. I'm sure all of his books are worth it. And I hear he's a master of the Southern Gothic, and Southern Gothic's amongst my favorite subgenre of horror fiction. So yeah, Michael McDowell, my favorite new author from this year. Question number 8. Newest fictional crush. Ew. I don't really like that question. I feel like ever since I got married, it's hard for me to have a crush on a fictional character I've never seen, particularly. But I will say, I think the most intriguing female character I've read in the books I've read this year is Evadine Corlane from The Pariah, because I love a powerful religious bad A woman because I'm married to one. So yeah, I'll go with Evadine Corlane, not because I think she's hot, because I can't even really picture what she looks like, but because such a strong, compelling female character, and I was raised in a family of strong, compelling women. So yeah, I'll go with Evadine Corlane, but I don't really have crushes on fictional characters. Question number 9. Newest favorite character, James Caskey, hands down. He's my favorite character from Blackwater, and he's a great character amongst great characters. But he's just so lifelike. I could picture James Caskey in my mind. He is so loving and self-sacrificing. He's a very charitable individual, the elderly patriarch of the Caskey family. He is surrounded by a bunch of manipulative, evil, power-hungry individuals, but he never gets his hands dirty. He is loving. He takes care of children. He takes care of his family. He always does the right thing. And he's a great character amongst great characters. James Caskey has a special place in my heart. And yeah, I can't talk too much about him because that would be spoilers for Blackwater, but give Blackwater a try and tell me you don't love James Caskey. I think it's impossible. You have to love him. Question number 10. Book that made you cry. I'm not sure I really cried for any of the books I read this year. Priest of Crowns. I did cry during Priest of Crowns, not just because I was disappointed. There were some key character deaths that really struck me in the feels, but I wasn't like sobbing. I just teared up during Priest of Crowns. What I did cry during was a manga I read, Orange. Orange made me cry. Real tears, like vocal crying. You could tell I was upset. Orange is a story about, it has time travel in it, but like a high school student, a girl, receives a letter from herself in the future, and she basically says, this friend you have is going to commit suicide, and I want you to stop it. It's a story about finding value in life, sticking around, and if you have any suicide in your background, this manga is a must read. I think it's only 7 volumes. I cried 5 or 6 times. Such a bittersweet read. Such a good read. I definitely cried at least 3 times during the first 2 volumes. So for like time, I only spent maybe like 8-ish hours reading Orange, and I cried 5 or 6 times. Orange is astounding. I've heard the anime adaptation is also really damn good, but the manga, amazing. Definitely my favorite manga of the year so far, and I cried buckets. Question number 11. Book that made you happy. I'm going to go with A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. This was such a happy, light-hearted, comedic fantasy read. In this book, magic users have very specific magical talents. Our protagonist, for example, has magical powers that only work with bread and baked goods. So they're basically a wizard baker. And there's a plot against the government, and there's magic being used in very ingenious ways. And the plot was very engaging. There were some beautiful passages. There were some emotional highs and lows. There's sentient gingerbread man. Her familiar is a sourdough starter. It's pretty bonkers. I'm not gonna lie. Teen Kingfisher can really write anything in a funny comedic way, and A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, definitely worth giving a try. Amongst the best 10 hours I spent reading this year. Question number 12. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. I'm not sure how to answer this because I don't really buy myself books, especially physical copies. Ooh, I bought a book for my wife. I'm gonna go with Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I got the illustrated edition for my wife. These are very beautiful books, but I haven't read Harry Potter, so I can't really speak to how accurate the artistic renditions are. But lots of beautiful artwork throughout, and I think they look pretty. They look really nice on the bookshelf. So I'll go with this, but I don't know. I don't buy books because they look nice. I usually don't judge books by their cover because I buy ebooks usually. Question number 13. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? I have a whole video about 10 standalone books I want to finish before 2025. If you're interested in figuring out what I plan on focusing my TBRs around, watch that video. I should link it somewhere around here. Other books I definitely plan on finishing before the end of the year. There are some series I want to get out of the way. Like there's Feral Creatures by Kira Jane Buxton. The second installment, I guess the sequel to Hollow Kingdom, one of my favorite books from last year. It's a zombie apocalypse story from the point of view of the animals that are left behind. I also plan on finishing the Crimson Empire trilogy, so I need to read A Blade of Black Steel and A War of Crimson Emperors. This trilogy has a special place in my heart, despite the fact that I have not finished it. Years ago, perhaps 6 years ago, I read the first 2 installments, but then I took too much time between the second and third installment, so then I felt the need to reread it. It's one of the reasons why I don't reread series, is because I feel like you lose too much time. But this trilogy is special to me because it's the first fantasy book I've read as an adult, and I loved it. So you'd think because I loved it so much, I would already have it done. So I'm definitely finishing that before 2024 is concluded. I also, oops, I also plan on finishing The Toll by Neil Shusterman, the third installment of the Age of Scythe trilogy. I've heard that The Toll is the worst installment in the trilogy. I heard that it does not end the trilogy in a cathartic, satisfying way, and that does make me sad. But I do need to finish what I started, because one of my goals for this year is to lessen the amount of series that I'm currently reading. So I got to finish this trilogy. I got to get it out of the way. I got to deal with the disappointment. Hopefully, it's not as bad as I heard. So there you have it. Mid-year freakout book tag complete. I like book tags. I might have to do more of them. Hopefully you guys like them so I could warrant and justify doing more book tag videos, because a lot of booktube channels don't do these anymore, and I think that's a damn shame. I look forward to seeing what the second half-ish of the year looks like and how all the reads turn out, and I look forward to seeing what the stories have in store for me. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.